Have you ever wondered what the different types of therapists are, like how they differ? So what's the difference between like a social worker and say a psychologist, or a CPC and an MFT? Like what does this really mean? What are the differences here? So let's start with a psychologist. A psychologist in most states, they have to have like a PhD or a PsyD to practice. There is an emphasis on assessment, an emphasis on psychological testing. So you can test for things like autism, for example. So a lot of what they do may be psychological testing, but they also may do therapy as well. Whereas, say, a CBC, a clinical professional counselor, that would be a master's degree. So they have the training to be a therapist, but you know what? They don't do psychological testing. They have a similar perspective as the psychologist, though, as working with the individual. The source of this person's issues is within them. Now, let's then kind of look at, well, what is an MFT, marriage family therapist, or kind of moving towards couples family therapist. So, a family therapist sees the issue as not internal. There's something going on in their immediate dynamic. So, let's say an 8-year-old suddenly has behavioral issues. They come see an MFT. The MFT has the mom and dad come in as well. It's just the mom, dad, and the 8-year-old in the family. They notice the mom and dad start fighting, and when mom and dad start fighting, this kid misbehaves. They stop fighting, they turn their attention to him, and they get mad at him. So he has this role placed on him as like black sheep or scapegoat, but also it serves a function for mom and dad to not deal with their own stuff. It helps them from not fighting each other. So there's these dynamics that can be in families that contribute to problems. So it's not the kid that's the issue. It's the dynamic that they're living in. Now let's look at a social worker. A social worker would be even step further back and looking at the system of not just the family, but systems in society. There aren't enough resources for these things. Things are set up so that certain people are treated differently. Certain people have disadvantages. So it's still kind of somewhat of a systemic lens but it's also more practical in the sense of, okay, what can we do for this individual? What resources can we get this person or this community? Social workers, they can do therapy. They can look at it from kind of a systemic or greater systemic, a social lens. They can look at it from an individual lens. CPCs will look at things from an individual lens, but sometimes they'll have couples come in there. Wait a second, they start to look at things maybe from a family lens. Marriage family therapists, yeah, we look at things from a family lens, a systemic lens, but also we look at things from an individual lens because this is so much ingrained in our society. So if you have an individual problem and you take it to an MFT, you still might get a little bit of that individual flavor, but you also might get something else as well. So let's say someone comes in for marriage family therapy, family therapy, and their kid has ADHD. Okay, how does this affect the family? What views are being portrayed on him? What roles are being placed on him? And how can we shift that to be something different? How can we shift this dynamic around him? How can we make this environment be successful for him? Because right now, the environment may be there's distractions every moment of every day, or changing this environment in the morning so that there aren't those distractions, so the kid can go out and make the bus. That's changing the environment. We need to do that so that he doesn't have these symptoms, and these symptoms don't affect us. There's things like that. Even in individual therapy, you might get that. So these are some things to consider if you're interested in finding a therapist.